Welcome to my first report on Wijk aan Zee 2015, the Tata Steel chess tournament. I always love Wijk aan Zee. It's always a really exciting event because the organisers put together a really exciting group of players, and what a field there is in the top group. It's a 14-player all-play-all. We've got two world champions playing, Magnus Carlsen and Ho Yifan, the women's world champion, who is improving all the time. We have the young pretenders to the world crown. There's Fabiano Caruana, rated number 2 in the world, has had a tremendous 2014. There's Wesley So. We've got Anish Giri. There's Levon Aronian. Well, it's an amazing field, and I think we're in for some great chess over the next couple of weeks. So, 7 games played, of course, in round 1, and 3 of those games were decisive. And I'm going to take you through those 3 games, at least the critical moments in those 3 decisive games. So first of all, let's look at the game between Vasily Ivanchuk, great to see him in the field, and Bahadur Jobava, this really exciting, aggressive, unorthodox player from Georgia. Now, it was a very interesting game. We joined the game after 41 moves, Jobava with the black pieces, and you can see it's even material. Jobava has this passed pawn on the queen side, and Ivanchuk has broken through the middle with his king and threatens to push this pawn. Well, in fact, he did push his pawn to e5 here. So, with Ivanchuk's king in such a centralised position and being able to support this potential passed e-pawn, then black has to be careful here. And probably the best way to play is to take here and to play rook f4 to force this pawn forward, and then, well, a4, possibly rook f3, and, well, as Ivanchuk said after the game, if black plays accurately, then probably he should draw. Jobava played rook a4. Now what he's trying to do is he's hoping to drive the rook to b3 to a slightly worse square. But Ivanchuk simply exchanged rooks, and in this position Jobava resigned. A terrible miscalculation by him, resigned without going any further at all. Why did he resign? Let's have a look. After this, well, we can see that this pawn threatens to queen, so the king comes back, better than pushing the e-pawn. And now black has to take care of this pawn advancing. Well, okay, it doesn't matter which way you do it. Let's take here first and play king c6. So the king has stopped the e-pawn. But there's a very simple way for white to win this. You bring the king back to d3. So this king is ready just to stop the a-pawn if it advances. Well, let's say king d7. It doesn't really matter which way round you do this. Or let's play king d5. Now the e-pawn advances at f6, so the king has to come back. And now here is the point. White just advances the c-pawn. And c5 check. So if this is taken, then the f-pawn goes home. So let's say king e6. And you push with c6, and white gets there first. So let's say e4 check. Well, you could just play the king back here. But actually, you can also just take this. And white is going to queen with check. If here, let's play this, let's get melodramatic. We make a queen, and we queen with check, and comes back. So, a terrible mistake by Jobava. He should have drawn that game, but just made a miscalculation. Let's move on to the next game. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Ho Yifan. And MVL has, well, played a really good technical game here. He has 3 pawns on the king side against this 1 pawn here, and Ifan has a pawn on the queen side, but obviously white has a pawn up here. If white can consolidate this position with potentially 2 connected passed pawns on the king side, white should win this, but technically difficult. You have to, make sure this b pawn isn't advancing. But MVL played very well. So bishop d5 from Ifan. She wants to try and somehow get this b pawn rolling. Now, obviously, if this is taken, then this f3 pawn is dropping. So now an excellent move from Vachier-Lagrave. Rook e3 check, and this puts Black's king in a very uncomfortable situation. Really, the king doesn't want to go back to the king side, because then the rook comes in and gets a much better position. I think you can check from the side and maybe bring the rook behind the pawn, and the king lacks pawn protection and white is getting control here. Or if king f6, this is actually very nasty, knight c7, and then the knight checks and comes to an excellent position. Yeah, this is extremely uncomfortable for black. The rook is coming in, and again white has control here. So understandably, Ifan played king d6, but rook d3 is a deadly move, absolutely deadly. The threat is to play knight b4, and the king can't sidestep. If king here, there's a knight fork. Or if king e6, again there's a nasty knight fork. They say knights on the rim are dim, but I tell you, that knight is performing a fantastic role here. Ifan played rook d8, but actually she resigned straight away because, well, this king and pawn ending is very simple. Once again, one side simplifies down into a king and pawn ending, and this is very, very simple. The king takes care of the b pawn, and, well, these pawns advance, and black's king can't touch the connected pawns on the king side. So, well, a very nice technical performance from Vachier-Lagrave. Okay, next game, next decisive game. Ding Liren, very strong Chinese player, against Fabiano Caruana. Well, we joined the game after 23 moves, Caruana with the black pieces, and, well, already things are looking quite promising for Caruana. He played rook d8. It's level material, but you can see that Caruana has pressure on this pawn on c4. And although this pawn chain on the king side looks very impressive, in fact, well, there's no kingside attack, and because this f-pawn is advanced, it means the second rank is potentially vulnerable. The king is vulnerable along this diagonal. This is a tricky position for white. You can see all these squares are vulnerable on the d-file. Really, white would love to play these pawns backwards, put them back here somewhere. Tricky position for white. Bishop c3. It's not possible to take that pawn, or inadvisable, because then white's rook would come down, and suddenly white's pieces are working very well here. But instead, Caruana took his time. He was very patient in this game. Queen d7 I like very much, so it's reinforcing control over this diagonal and looking at these weak squares here. Bishop f1, guarding the pawn and guarding the d3 square. Bishop f5, so hitting the rook, and the rook went back in the corner. Nasty, and now f6, excellent move. Now if this is taken, then the pawn is going to be weak on e5 and the f-file opens. So Ding Liren really had to exchange on f6, but now there's potentially weak squares on the e-file. So really Caruana is starting to dominate the centre, and Ding Liren's play on the queen side, well, it's just not very effective, and well, knight a4 is an excellent move, so that guards the c pawn, looks at the bishop, and if the bishop comes to a5, then, well, you can see that this is extremely unpleasant for white. You know, this king, you know, white's pieces are miles away from the king's side. Great centralization from black. So, well, Ding gave up his bishop. So it sort of sorts out his pieces, but, you know, with the two bishops, black is looking good here, and it's really interesting to see how Caruana exploited this advantage of the two bishops. First of all, great square for the bishop on this long diagonal, cutting down across the king's side and preparing f5. Now, if this pawn is taken, this is very coolly calculated, then f5, and black wins material. So Ding played f5 to block that pawn, but, well, this was just taken. And, well, what fantastic centralization. You know, black's pieces are so well coordinated here. Compare with white's rooks that are split. So, okay, material is now even, but Caruana really didn't, he didn't panic here. He didn't rush things. Just played very calmly, and what a beautiful position now. So both bishops are now raking across the board, and, well, they're about to turn towards the king as well. I mean, this is such a powerful illustration of the power of the two bishops. Queen f4, threatening rook c7. Very calm from Caruana again. Rook e7, just covering second rank. There's no need to rush this one. Now, really, white would very much like to trade one pair of bishops at least, but this loses instantly. This is the problem. Actually loses material. To this check, this has to be exchanged. The rook is on, so queen f2 has to be played, and then black wins material very simply with rook d2 check. So h4. Well, the Chinese player is trying to give his king some room. And now, this next move I really love. So how exactly does black make progress here? Well, it's fantastic. He plays a5, and this tiny foot soldier is like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Fantastic. This tips white over the edge. The threat is to play a4 to drive the knight away, and then bishop d4 check. So even if rook b5, let's see what happens. a4, the knight goes back, queen d4 check. This is a killing move. If king h2, then the queen comes in, and well, like I said, the weakness of the second rank. If knight at e2, you take the pawn. If rook e2, you play rook d1, and that wins material. Or after queen d4 check, if queen f2, well, we take, and there we go, the power of the two bishops. That is absolutely decisive. So that's the threat. Now, what happens if this is taken? Well, if knight takes a5, bishop d4 check wins. Rook a5 was played in the game, but this also loses very simply to bishop c3. Rook d5 was played, but check. And the rooks were exchanged, and then bishop takes rook is a whole rook up for black. I love that game. Such calm play from Caruana. And yes, that move, a5, what a star move to win the game. So, I should mention, in Carlsen's game, he had the black pieces against Anish Giri. Anish Giri, with the white pieces, played very cautiously, didn't risk anything, and, well, it was a draw without too many fireworks. So, yeah, Carlsen started with a draw, but we have three winners after the first round: Caruana, Ivanchuk, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So 13 rounds in total over the next couple of weeks. Do join me. I'll be doing round reports every day.